Delete entries. Okay, delete entries will include payments, service charges, and adjustments. Your delete options are going to be under payables and receivable accounts. So let's go take a look at some of these options. Back to the software. I'm going to go ahead and close up the cash drawer here, and we're going to go back to our payable account. Let's focus on payables first. Okay. In the payable account, we do have the ability to make deletes. I have to watch this because I'm going to do some more things with this account, so I don't want to go in here and delete a bunch of things, but I do want to show you guys how it actually does work. So from the payable account, we have the ability to delete a payment. I don't have a payment in here, so I'm going to wait just a minute on that, but I'll come back to that. Here's a contra entry. Remember, this is where we have moved money from a receivable account to a payable account. So we're not actually going to collect the money from the customer. We're going to get a credit on our payable account. I simply highlight the contra entry, select delete. It's just going to ask us to confirm by typing in the yes answer, and it would delete that entry. Okay, I'm not going to do it again because I've got some other things I want to show you guys in here, but it will delete that entry. Another entry we have the ability to delete in the supplier or payable account, okay, is going to be any adjustments. You can see here I've used the adjustment feature to enter an early payment discount. So some of you might get that on your payable accounts. They might call it a prompt payment discount or early payment discount. But if you needed to do any adjustment on the payable account of that consideration, then make the entry. And then, gee whiz, if you don't get it in on time, then you also have the ability to delete the entry. So contras can be deleted. Adjustments can be deleted. Okay. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and make a payment and show you how that works. The best way to use your payments in the payable side of the software would be to use the reconciliation. There is a make a payment up here, and by the way, that's where you could just make a payment against the account or process a contra entry. But I like to use the reconciliation feature because what it does is it brings forward all of my details in the background. Okay, they're all brought forward. What's my payment date going to be? Let's say I'm going to make the payment today, and then I have the ability to reconcile, meaning go line by line. Or I also have the ability to utilize what's called a match feature, which says I want to match all transactions, okay, on or before this date. So in this case, if I said the 28th, I can change it back. I can say the 28th. Watch the little boxes over here when I say okay. Okay, so it's only going to check those items. All right. So essentially, that's the way this stuff flows. So you can go in and make a payment against this. Now, I wouldn't make a payment for a negative 307, so I'm going to go ahead and include these other items. I'm going to pay off the whole account, which totals the $1632.33. Okay, so remember, your find tool works great, or you can individually check the lines as you reconcile. I'll go to the next screen. It says, okay, these are the items you're paying. Here's your payment date. Here's your payment amount. How do you want to make the payment? Let's say I'm going to write a check on my bank account. In the notes, I could put any detailed notes. So this would be payment for or through, okay, through whatever date I want to make the payment. And the payment date is going to be 6/29. So I'll just, make a little note in there. Okay. You don't have to add to the note, but it's nice to have. And another feature that I want to point out to you here is we have the ability to automatically purge the account when we make a payment. If you don't like that feature, you can just uncheck the box, and there is a setting in your setup to do that. Purging, an example, is going to be filing away. I see way too many people that don't purge their accounts. And what happens then is in the background, you have old information that's been paid off, and all it's doing is cluttering up your system. I explained this to a customer yesterday. Purging is much like what I do at the end of the day. I might have 10 phone calls a day with customers, get 5 or 10 emails, and I put everything in a folder. And everything I do, I lay out on my desk and I write my notes. At the end of the day, I take those notes and put them into our company database, okay? And then I file that folder away. So think of purging like cleaning off your desk at the end of the day. It does not mean the information is removed. It just means it's been filed away. You will always be able to get back to it. And I'm going to show you that here in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and automatically purge. And when I process this, how do I want to make the payment? Is it going to be a direct draft or an ATM? Or is it going to be a check that I'm going to write? So I'm going to write a check. So I'll check the box and here comes up the check. All the details are on here. Okay, I can add to the notes below. And if this is an item to be printed, I'd leave it to be printed. If I write manual checks, then I'd uncheck the box and put my check number up here. I'm just going to leave it as a to be printed. Click on save. Bingo, now look at this account. It's all nice and clean. It's just like coming in the morning with a clean desk. Otherwise, we have a bunch of information in here. I'll tell you another thing that not purging affects your software on is the speed. Because every time you go to a payable account that has so much detail in it, that's a call. What that means is the software has to bring all that information back. Okay. Now, some of these deletes, okay, you're going to have to be careful with on payments. Okay. Notice all those details went away. If I want to see those details, I can go right down here, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, but I can say, bring those details back up, okay? And there are the details. Now, they're highlighted in gray saying they're purged items, so all I can do is view them. I cannot do deletes. I cannot make adjustments to these things once they've been processed. Here you see what I was saying earlier. Notice in the amount column is different than the outstanding column. So when you see any values that are different in these two columns, you're not going to be able to make adjustments to these entries. Okay. So if you needed to make an adjustment, okay, we do have the ability, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, to do an undo last purge. So we're going to come back to this in a bit. So I'm just going to take this screen back to where it was. Let's look at the other side of this coin. Okay, on the ability to delete entries. And I'm going to move over to the receivable side. Okay, what I'm going to do in here, okay, is bring up a receivable account. Now this is the same receivable account that I posted that Contra entry to. So I'm going to see on the receivable and the payable side the Contra entry, because Contra takes money from a payable or a receivable and moves it to a receivable or a payable. It's just like flipping the page over. You're looking at one side or the other side of this. In here, we do have the ability to go in and delete a payment. Okay, so if I had a payment in here, I could go ahead and delete it. The problem is going to be, I think you guys are all seeing this, notice that the amount in the outstanding column are different. It's not going to let me delete it. The values, in other words, this has credits or debits or applieds to it. And as long as those two values are different, it's not going to let me delete. Although the button's going to come up, it's going to tell me I'm not going to be able to do it. Okay, but we're going to come back and look at this in a minute. Contra, I do have the ability to delete the contra, okay, just like I did at the payable side. Service charges. I see a lot of customers go in and put service charges on their receivable accounts, usually knowing that they're not going to collect that. So obviously you have your reasons for doing that, okay? But in the case where you put service charges on and your customer says, I'm not paying service charges, most people back down, and you do have the ability to go in and delete that. Okay, but again, we have to watch, because remember, the values are different in here. Okay, when the values are different, it's not really going to let us delete that item. And then I also added another entry for an adjustment. So I made an adjustment to this account. I've called it my excellent customer discount. Notice my values are the same. So I know there's no underlying posting of a debit or a credit to this item. So if I will delete this one. So if I go in and select delete, I'm going to have to answer the question, okay, because somebody's got to type that in and watch in the background for the adjustment, okay, and we remove that and it's gone. So keep that in mind. If I go in and I'll go ahead and do this service charge, okay, and you know, process it, but you've got to keep in mind these values in these columns, because that's again what makes the difference. Okay, let's go ahead and process a payment. Again, in the receivable side, you know, the customer can say, I'm paying these invoices, or the customer can just pay everything. Notice this, when I use make a payment, it only brings up what the customer owes me. It only brings up what they owe me for. It doesn't bring up the other details in the background. On the other hand, if I go to a reconciliation, then I'm going to see other information. So I like promoting using the reconciliation, just my own quirk. It's up to you guys if you want to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and select these items. I've received a payment for $739.13. I'll move to the next screen. How did the customer pay? What date do I want to post the payment to? Okay, and then of course any notes in here. And one of the things I like to do and tell people is it's always good to come in here and put the check number. So if you have that check, it's always a nice feature to go ahead and put the check number in here. And the same scenario with purging. If I make the payment to clear this account off, I want to get rid of any details that have a 0 in the outstanding, okay? And if I process that, okay, it asks me if I want to print a receipt. So you can print a receipt to give to your customer. I'm not going to print one. And now my screen refreshes. So keep those activities in mind. And remember, you always have the ability to come back and look at purged transactions. They'll be highlighted in gray, okay? And we're fixing to move here if you needed to undo the last purge, and that's something we're going to talk about in the undo. So to review this from accounting, payables, and receivable accounts, we have the ability to delete payable account payments, contra entries, and adjustments, as long as the payments and adjustments have not been purged. We have the ability to delete items in the receivable account, payment, contra entries, service charges, and adjustments, again, as long as they haven't been purged. And I've made the note at the bottom, if needed, use the undo last purge. And that's where we're going next.